Hi, I'm Tory Bruno. I've been a rocket scientist for 40 years, and I got to tell you that every single day has been an adventure. I have gotten the opportunity to do just amazing things. I have slept on a torpedo. I have shot a bullet out of the sky with another bullet. I have stood in the middle of Armageddon with all of its terrifying and awesome power. But I have also sent a spacecraft into orbit around the sun, the fastest human object in the universe, flying directly through the literal atmosphere of the sun. There is no career like a career spent in service to this great nation, service to the awesome cause of exploration, and service to the great calling of human dignity around this planet. And now, on the burn sequence, I'm going to pull that curtain back a little bit and let you look inside. So welcome to our show, and welcome to the burn sequence. Boy, we have a really fun guest today. We are going to be talking with retired 3-star Lieutenant General Nina Armagno. And Nina has had just a really cool career, a lot of it in space, which is unusual in the Air Force to spend almost your entire career involved in a discipline like that. So she's really one of the pioneers of space, and then went on to be one of the founders of the Space Force. And so we're going to talk about what that was like, the challenges that were faced, what was in her mind when she pulled together a small team to really create the structure that the Space Force would operate in. Maybe we'll get some fun stories out of her. You know, she commanded both Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg when she was in the Air Force. And, you know, today that's enveloped together, but back then she was probably the only person who had ever done that. And of course, joining the Space Force is almost employee zero. I think maybe General Raymond gets that honor, so she'd be employee number 1. That made her the first general officer, female in the Space Force, as well as, you know, just a great leader. One of the cool things about our industry is you get to work with really, really smart people, and she's one of those kinds of people. Very intellectual, very thoughtful, and just really a wonderful leader. You know, I never saw anyone who didn't, serve in her command that didn't think she was amazing. And I thought she was amazing as a contractor. So we're going to have a really fun conversation today with Nina, and welcome to the burn sequence. I have been thinking a lot recently about the incredible historic and geopolitical importance of the United States standing up a Space Force. I think most people know that a creation of a new military service doesn't happen very often. You might say it's a once in a lifetime, but it's actually less often than that. And most recently, it was the Air Force at the end of World War II. And it was stood up because it was appreciated that air was so important, that it was a unique domain that really had a dominating effect in warfare. And so this was stood up. But it's really deeper than that. It's not just that it's a symbolic action, to recognize the importance of a particular job that our armed forces have to do. It is something that has to be supported. The Army and the Navy, for example, these are very different domains. And you have separate services because the tools and the operations of using those tools in their domain are just so very, very different. And you have a different service so that as, an enlisted person, a non-commissioned officer, or an officer in those services, as they commit a lifelong career to that and they proceed through the various jobs and ranks and levels, that they are becoming more and more expert and have greater and greater depth in those specific tools and how they are used, whether they're acquirers or operators, policy people, requirements people. They're really delving deep, and they're really becoming the smartest people in the world at these very unique things. And I think that's sort of obvious when you look at a service like the Army and the Navy, for example. There aren't a lot of Aegis cruisers zooming around on the battlefield. Operations at sea are different than operations in land, and obviously in the air, hence the creation of the Air Force. Well, there is nothing in terms of a domain that is more unique and more different than the other domains than space. And so we created a Space Force in recognition of how vitally important space has now become, and that it's a contested environment. Our adversaries are aware that we cannot conduct military operations without space. It's not just a force multiplier anymore. It's absolutely essential. And therefore, they look to space as a way of leveling the playing field down here on Earth for a terrestrial conflict. And so we need that type of expertise. We need people who really understand the unique technologies that go to space, because they are very, very different. Even the physics is different in space. Newton kind of steps aside and Kepler comes in, and everything about orbital mechanics is really not terribly intuitive. And so we need professionals in the military who are not going in and out of space. Well, here's my 2 years, supporting operations at Vandenberg, and now I'm going to rotate to Ramstein and take care of cargo airplanes. They're just completely different. And it's like having two careers. We really want these people to be able to focus and drive down. And it was visionary to create the Space Force. It is going to be vitally important to our future. And that's what we're going to get to talk about today with one of the people who helped create it, who helped stand it up and establish the infrastructure and the structure with which it operates. We get to talk to one of the founders of this startup that we call the Space Force. Well, hello, Lieutenant General Nina Armagno. Welcome to the Burn Sequence.
Hi, Tory. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. You are, of course, one of the founding members of the Space Force, which is really exciting, historic, in fact. And there's just so much to talk about. But I thought we'd start with, we'll ease into it. So I'll start with the easy stuff. You've had a pretty remarkable career in the Air Force and the Space Force, of course, one of the founding members and all. So I got to ask you, what's the coolest thing that you did in your military career?
Oh, wow. That's so hard because I did a lot of cool things, as you know. Um, well, first, thanks for having me on the burn sequence. I like what you're doing here, and I think we will have a enjoyable conversation. Um, gosh, I did so many cool things, from the various missions I did as a space operator throughout my career. I got to be on Capitol Hill as an Air Force fellow, learning how, that machinery works. I got to be the J5 at U.S. Strategic Command. And toward the end of my career, do space acquisition in the Pentagon. So many cool things, but I have to say the coolest, and it's going to sound a little sappy, I think, maybe, but the coolest thing is leading people and helping them grow as an individual, as grow as teams. I love building high performing teams where, a group of people come from all walks of life. They get together, they focus on a mission, and pretty soon they don't even need orders. They're in it together, they're in it to win it, and they don't need much guidance. They're just absolutely incredible, doing things I could have never imagined as their leader. So I got to say, leading people was the best. And they don't really have to follow you. It's their choice. Even though it's the military and we're in uniform and there's orders
Yeah.
and consequences for not following orders. But at the end of the day, when a team it really comes together, and I know you've had this experience in your career too, when a team really comes together, it's because they believe, and it's just the coolest thing ever.
Yep, that is so true. And that's one of the big secrets about being a leader is everyone's actually a volunteer. And you can't make them do anything. They have to want to do it. Even in the military, so you've heard it here first, listeners. Even a lieutenant general can't make you do anything. They can make you want to, but you have to want to. And it is true, and that's a great answer because it's one of the things I admire about you, Nina. You're just a wonderful leader. You've had a great career and everything. You're incredibly intelligent. That's how I first noticed you when we crossed paths. I go, wow, she is really, really smart. And I really enjoy working with smart people, but it didn't take very long to figure out you're a great leader as well. So having said that, you must have had a really unique leadership challenge in getting the Space Force going, a completely different domain. That must have been really something. What was that like?
Yeah. So we could. This is a perfect segue from what I was just talking about as far as building high performing teams. So there's a continuum, basically in like 4 different categories of situational leadership, where the highest category is this. It's a high performing team. Everyone is operating pretty much on their own because they know what's expected of them, and actually they're coming up with ideas you could never even have dreamed of yourself. But at the very beginning of that continuum is S1, which is directive. You direct everything. And I had been so used to living in S4 over many years that I had personally quite a leadership challenge standing up the Space Force. So let me explain what I mean. I was asked to come over. So President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act in 2019 on December 20th. In early 2020, I was asked to come over and assist standing up the Space Force. I was a 2-star. General D.T. Thompson was in the Pentagon as well as a 3-star. And we had a group of probably voluntold from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and we even had a Marine.
Oh my.
It was a group of about 30 people. And this was the Space Force stand-up team. So we were responsible for designing the headquarters, defining what roles the headquarters would have, what the Space Force would do, parsing, what the Air Force would still, how they would still support the Space Force, because the service couldn't just take over and do it all with really no one assigned to the Space Force yet. So this group of us, the voluntold, came over and we every day rolled up our sleeves. We worked hard. We knew the importance, the historic importance of what we were doing every day. Everyone was motivated. No one said, well, this is my job. I can't do anything else. Everyone did everything they possibly could on a daily basis. COVID struck. We were back at the Pentagon with masks on.
So this is like a startup, and you were like employee 0 or something.
It was a startup. We said, are we a spinoff or a startup? And we concluded after much, trying to figure this out, we concluded we were truly a startup because the idea was clean sheet.
Yeah.
We wanted to be lean, mean, agile. We were going to stay small. But my point about the leadership challenge was many members of this early team, they had great skills, They came to us with the skill sets that they had developed in their careers in their various services, but many of them could not even spell space. So so I had to go S1 on many of those that surrounded me, and I hadn't been an S1 leader since, I don't know, maybe lieutenant or captain days. So it was quite a challenge for me to get, down in the weeds directing things
Yeah.
that
So sort of a personal adjustment.
that's the personal adjustment. Bigger
Yeah.
picture, the Space Force, I think the leadership challenge across the board was there was so much to do, and we had to prioritize and stay disciplined in that execution. And the director of staff office was key to documenting all those required tasks. We
Right.
had, I mean, easily 500 tasks that we had documented, and to stay disciplined to finish that job, I think was a key leadership challenge for all of us in the Space Force, because the new idea ferry showed up about once a week. We had to say, okay, great idea, but not yet, not yet.
That's hilarious. Did you get much warning? Because I, I was serving the Space Council then in the Users Advisory Group, and we had been called over to the White House for some announcement or something. And the president walks in the room. We're all standing there, and he's talking to people and shaking hands. And he goes, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to announce the Space Force today." And we're like, "What?" And I look over. I won't use names, but I'll look over at a couple of general officers that are there with us, and they looked really surprised. So, did you guys get any warning that this was coming?
No, no. We thought that just from all the signaling, I guess we had gotten from the Hill
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and the White House, the thought was we would be directed to plan. That the Authorization Act would tell us to go continue to plan for another 18 months. So when the announcement was made and the act was signed, there was only one member of the Space Force, and it was written into law that it was our first chief of space operations.
Oh, right.
That was the only member, and the
Oh
rest of
my.
us, for the rest of us, it was a kind of a mad scramble.
Okay. Well, you guys got it done. It's up and running. So, how do you feel about that? And what? I'm kind of curious how you see its future evolution. What's your vision for that?
I think they're doing pretty well. I mean, I know that our early focus was on a small service, kind of like the Marine Corps is to the Navy. It's a
Yeah.
smaller, more agile. They've got an expert, um, mission and focus,
Hmm.
and so we were designing ourselves to be that way. We also had an emerging mission in the space domain to protect and defend in the face of threats from Russia and China.
Yeah.
And we had to continue to provide the exquisite data that comes from space for our joint force. There's no operation that happens today without space. Not one military operation, and certainly not a joint combined operation. So we're talking exquisite capabilities in the form of communications and early warning, and even weather and GPS, of course. So
Yeah. Yeah.
all of what we were providing from space had to continue as well. And
Right.
so even though we talk about some kind of surprise at the beginning of establishing the Space Force, I can definitely tell you tons of stories of things moving and changing. You know what didn't change?
What?
We executed the mission every
Yeah,
single day.
that's
And
right.
those were leaders in the field. Like Stephen Whiting was at
Hmm.
what was Air Force Space Command. It became Space Operations Command. He 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 made sure that the mission never ever skipped a beat, no matter what was happening up here at the headquarters as it was trying to be established. He made
Yep.
sure that that did not interfere, and I am so proud of that fact. There was no dropped mission.
Oh, it's very impressive. I mean, I noticed that at the time, obviously, that, here you are. I mean, you're not just changing the tires on the race car down the track. You're pulling the engine out, you're switching the driver, and from the outside, it was just transparent.
Oh,
There,
that's so great. Right, because you saw it
mm-hmm.
from your seat there at United Launch Alliance. I mean, yeah, we kept launching, we kept
Yeah,
operating. Those satellites kept getting built. Uh, and certainly operations did not falter.
not at all.
Yeah. And I think they're on the right path. I mean, I think you did ask me what, how's it going from where I sit now and what do I see for the future? I think they're doing pretty well. I mean, the first few years, for better or worse, we had to establish things like our name. I remember the
Yes.
Guardians. Poor General Raymond going back and forth to the Secretary of Defense to talk about and basically sell the name, our
Mm-hmm.
motto, our uniform. It's quite a fun story. Um, Coming up with the song. I mean, a lot of this was trying to establish both internally for ourselves and externally for the American people, for
Right.
Congress, for the White House, internally and externally, uh, establishing a difference from the Air Force.
Right.
We came from the Air Force, but we were moving in a different direction from the Air
Right.
Force, and we just had to really try to establish that at first. And you can fast forward to today. CSO number 2, General Saltzman, is focused more on, well, I should say less on establishment things and more on doctrine. He has doctrine documents. He has strategies out
Yeah.
there for commercial use for allies and partners. Those are things, of course, it would have been great to do in those first few years, but but we really did have to do the very basics of establishing that
Right.
service from really nothing and kind of pulling
From
it
nothing.
from nothing. So we had to do that, and I know that things aren't perfect for the Space Force. Their budget is technically declining. And for such a young service, 5.5 years old,
Mm-hmm.
really there should only be one way. There should only be one way, and that's up. But the budget is, it looked flat, and now if you really scrutinize it, it's actually declining.
Yeah.
The Golden Dome Golden Dome is benefiting space, as was the reconciliation bill, but those to me are not funding the programs the Space Force has decided it needs to protect and defend. So we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
offenses and defenses that need to be built, acquired, funded. Those projects and programs, I fear, are not being funded properly and for the duration of what needs to be. They're not going to be an enduring capability if they're
Yeah.
not funded.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And, I felt for a long time under the prior administration that we really only had half a strategy. We were deeply invested in resilience through proliferation. Great, important to do, absolutely vital. But at some point, you have to make them stop shooting at you, and there needed to be a counterforce mission and active defense. And we're starting pretty cold on that. That's going to take funding and it's going to take programs.
Yes. Yes.
I wonder did you feel like, as we were going through this, that there was a real mindset shift in the Pentagon from space being this place where we did intel and GPS to, hey, this is a combatant environment and it's contested? Or is that still sinking in today?
Oh, gosh. Where do I start? The Pentagon is layers and layers and layers of offices who have been empowered over years to say no. Just no.
To any question.
Oh, yeah. So, back in 2015, when General Hyten was the commander of Air Force Space Command, he brought the best minds in the business together and put a study together. He called it his summer project. They had something like 60 days to put together what he called the Space Enterprise Vision. So this was based on the 2014 SPEAR, which was the foundational intelligence report that we needed to understand the threats coming from Russia and China and realize that the space architecture as it was absolutely fragile. We had built our satellites to be exquisite, but they weren't protected or defended. They had no onboard protection capabilities. Certainly nothing was designed to defend them in space. In fact, they were very fragile and designed that way because they had been built in a benign environment. So with the 2014 SPEAR in hand and General Hyten's direction to produce a space enterprise vision, the very first aspect of it that we brought into the Pentagon was this idea of resilience, to build smaller satellites that would have shorter design lives so that they could be technologically refreshed every 3 to 5 years. Multiple satellites, and instead of having a specific satellite in a key exquisite orbit, you would diversify the orbits, you would distribute the capabilities. It was all in the name of resilience. Also to complicate Russia and China's targeting, because we'd have multiple systems rather than just one exquisite, for example. So taking that philosophy into the Pentagon was so difficult. Talk about a mindset change.
Oh, yeah.
They were still arguing about the intelligence. You couldn't, you would start the conversation, of course, by saying, okay, here's the impetus for this change. Here's the 2014 SPEAR. And they would begin the conversation arguing about the outcome of the SPEAR.
So it's not really happening. We're not actually threatened.
We're not, oh no, these are not the droids. I mean, it was to me insanity. And I said there were multiple layers of people who can say no in the Pentagon. Well, you got to start here, especially when you were my rank. I was a 2-star. I know that sounds like, a high rank, but in the Pentagon, that's nothing. You come in as a 2-star, and you're meeting with all the deputies and the assistants and the unders, and Well, actually, the under would have been a big deal, but you start very, very basic, and then there's rooms full of people saying no.
Yeah.
Not just individual meetings. So it was quite a challenge. But what actually finally broke through was the analysis that we had. We brought analysis that people couldn't really deny. We showed the consequences of attacking our current architecture, and then we showed the consequences of attacking a proliferated architecture. So we were able to prove resilience, and finally those capabilities and that strategy, that vision, started becoming accepted and funded. But it took years.
Yes, I remember watching it, and I couldn't believe how long it was taking to sink in.
Yes, I personally had the job of taking the Space Enterprise vision, which Stephen Whiting had led for General Hyten, and he briefed the vision at all levels. Then I had to take the vision and implement it because I was at Air Force Space Command responsible for
Right.
requirements.
Right.
And oh my gosh, it was it was very, very hard. Starting in 2016.
Yeah. Oh, I remember it. I was at a satellite manufacturer, and you probably saw this as you were fighting the battle, but there was just this constant effort to find an easy button to push to not have to do any of this. And I can remember sitting in a skiff and getting briefed. This is all what I'll share. It's obviously unclassified, but basically the idea was, we don't need to do any of this stuff. We're just going to put more propellant on these big spacecraft, and they'll just dodge and weave somehow faster than these purpose-built weapons that were designed to attack them. And these were smart guys, and they were dead serious, and they're briefing me through it, and I'm just thinking, this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. There is no easy button here. We're going to have to address this threat, and we're going to have to do it in a holistic way.
And Tory, it wasn't just one company. It really was all of them, because I think they saw, their business at risk, their livelihood. They all fought us, and so one of the strategies was to read them in, because the Space Enterprise vision at the time and all the analysis was, it was classified at the absolute highest level, but you can clear people in industry to the highest level, and we did, and we briefed this vision and our new architecture all across the country, but then we quickly learned, wait a second, we only reached one person in each company.
Yeah, it takes more than one.
And we only briefed them once, so they're not going to be expert, So it was a learning experience on I think all sides. I distinctly remember General Hyten saying, when he was Air Force Base Command commander, we will not have competing analysis. This is the analysis. Take it or leave it. And that was fun. well, when I said it as a 2-star, people just laughed. But when he said it, they knew he was serious.
Well, I saw you guys, and I thought, boy, they are preaching the word through the wilderness, and this is going to be a journey. So, as we sit today, because everybody's got it now. We understand this is a real threat. We understand that we've moved from that era where, space was kind of an enabler and a force multiplier to one, as you said a few minutes ago, we just can't do anything without it. And they know that, and they see it as a way to level the playing field and to be able to take us on. So, I don't believe that conflicts escalate to space anymore. I think they start there, at least with those great powers. So having said that, if you had to pick out unclassified, we're not in the skiff here, what are the most urgent threats out of China that you think ought to be at the top of the list?
Well, I think your listeners know that both Russia and China have all kinds of threatening capabilities. They both have ground-based anti-satellite missiles. They both have space-based anti-satellite satellites. They both have lasing capabilities from the ground and jammers and jamming capabilities from the ground, and we know they're moving those to the space domain as well. What is scary about China and the most concerning is, in my mind, they've gotten to skip a lot of steps. They didn't have to start from zero. They were able to, and they continue to, steal technology and make it their own. They didn't, and I'm not saying they're not creative or good engineers, because I think they probably are both. But they were able to skip a lot of steps and get to a position of threatening power a lot quicker than if they had started back where Russia started, or where the United States started building capabilities from scratch. The scariest thing that they're doing, though, China, is they're actually practicing their tactics, techniques, and procedures. And we only know this as in our non-skiffs, in our daily lives, because of commercial companies like Exoanalytics and Slingshot and others that are watching China's behavior on a daily basis. So you have an American satellite in orbit, and China is intercepting that satellite multiple times a day with different kinds of maneuvers where they can come in. It's not like this in the air domain. It's more like whoop, whoop in the space domain. But it's happening. And why is it happening? I mean, they demonstrated the capability to destroy a satellite back in 2007. Today, they're demonstrating their capabilities in space to hold the United States at risk. That's what's scariest to me about China.
And right out in the open, they know we're watching, and we're not doing anything about it, and it's just emboldening them, isn't it?
It could very well be. It could very well be, Tory, because I haven't heard that it's stopping in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, a little scary. But having said that, I have confidence that now that we've put our mind to it, we're going to be able to cope with this. Our system is in every way superior. It's not a directed economy. It's not research and development that's directed from a central point. It's that great power of this partnership we have between the government and industry to innovate, to try and come up with new ideas. And when necessary, we can go very fast.
Yes. As I'm sure you know in your career.
Oh, yes. I've had opportunities to, I'll say it this way. I've been asked to go fast when it was urgent, and we knew how, and we still do. And our fundamental technology is still superior. We're still a generation or two ahead of them in space. It's the application of that to space weaponry and to force application that we are really kind of falling behind them and need to catch up real quick.
Yeah. Well, which is why, when I express my concerns about the Space Force budget, I mean, here it is. And this is why.
Exactly. we're in a race and we're starting, a couple of years after they've already come off the chocks. So we really can't afford to do things like that. We got to get on it.
Mm-hmm.
Producer's giving me a high sign, so I'm going to start coming in. I got to come back to, before we lighten it up, as we always do at the end, a really serious question. It's a question about the Guardian uniform. And
What about it?
well, let me give you a little context, because, there was a time, before the global war on terror, when, we dressed the same. We'd go and we'd interact with our counterparts who were not in the field. And, you guys, you dress like we did. There's slacks, sometimes skirts, dress shirts, shirts with collars, ties. You had jacket just like I'm wearing now. They just made you pin a bunch of stuff all over. It must have been hell to get that thing dry cleaned. And then, 9/11 happened, and every service member was a warfighter. And so the standard uniform became, the camouflage fatigues. And that thing was stunning. The pockets on that uniform. Oh my gosh, there's back pockets and front pockets and there's pockets on the sleeves. The sheer stunning majesty of the pockets. There's more pockets on that uniform than one of the SDA's proliferated Leo constellations. And, we in industry, we're very envious of this thing. I mean, Nina, there has never been an engineer that didn't feel they could not use more pockets. And here we are, and you guys are like that. So it was this whole sweeping arc of just pocketry, and then all of a sudden this Guardian uniform comes out. I don't think there's any pockets on it. I mean, where did that come from? Was it like jittery withdrawals whenever you had to wear one of those things? And what the heck did you do with your keys?
Tory. First of all, I had no idea that engineers coveted our utility uniform.
Absolutely.
But I can actually kind of see that. Okay, so I have to dispel some things here first. The Space Force uniform was the one that is designed and out there is a prototype. It still hasn't been officially okay. The uniform process is its own bureaucracy. The material has to be made from cotton grown in the United States, like from a seed. So for everyone needs to just be patient for the Space Force to get the final official uniform with the material. But so what we're talking about is the service dress. The service dress. The Space Force Guardians still wear the same utility uniform as the Air Force today to save money. And, you just can't bite off the whole elephant when you're building a new service. So this uniform is actually the service dress uniform. We chose it to be the first one we kind of embarked on to have a distinction in more formal settings. And every time you go to the Hill or the White House, you got to wear a service dress. So that that was the first. It'll be the first visual distinction of a different service and a new service. We actually designed that uniform to look more modern. I know we got a lot of cracks about similarities to the USAFA band uniform. But it was, I'm going to be serious for a second. It was actually designed, I'm pretty proud to say, as a woman's uniform first.
Oh, that's got to be a first.
Yes. We got material actually from Mexico because our cotton seeds had not yet been planted. Which was actually it was a very nice material with some stretch into it, and it had some real comfort to it. We worked with a tailor in Georgetown
Oh, wow.
and had a model. Her name is now Colonel. She's made Colonel and now she's a Delta commander, Allie Gonzalez.
Oh,
Allie
yeah.
was our model. And so we designed and iterated and worked with a tailor to craft this uniform, and went, back and forth, brought the model, into the Pentagon, made adjustments, brought it back, the uniform back to the tailor. And I think what we came up with, even though it is still technically a prototype, is something distinct, more modern looking,
Oh,
and
yes.
actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
General Raymond wanted it to be two-toned, so that's, hence the gray slacks and the gray skirt. I think it looks pretty darn cool.
I like it too, by the way. But what about the pockets, Nina?
There are pockets in the pants, okay?
Oh, okay. All right.
Pockets in the pants and the skirt.
Well, I think it is very distinctive. And in that regard, it's a home run. When you see that uniform, that's Space Force.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to go to the lightning round. Did they warn you about this?
Oh, I got warned.
All right. Here we go. I'm going to give you like two choices. Yeah, you got to pick one. You can elaborate if you want to, but you don't have to.
Okay.
You can. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So the first one, we ask everybody, Kirk or Spock?
Spock. Brains over brawn.
Absolutely. All right. Teddy Roosevelt or JFK?
This one's kind of hard, but I have to say JFK for, the vision to get to the moon, the inspiration to get to the moon.
Yeah. Well, he was all about space, of course. All right. Space Force or Air Force?
How could you even ask me this question? Space Force.
Of course. Absolutely. All right. Here's one a little bit more esoteric. Leo or Geo?
Geo, because it's all about location, location, location.
The ultimate high ground.
It's awesome.
Pretty soon it'll be XGO and lunar. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of people don't know that are you still the only person who's ever commanded the launch sites at the East and West?
Only person in the Air Force, because now the way the Space Force is designed,
That's right.
the PEO of launch is actually over both ranges, and colonels run the day-to-day commanding of those ranges. But in my time in the Air Force, yes, I was the only one.
Okay. Cape or Vandenberg?
I can't. Okay. This is like picking a favorite child. Impossible. Both.
Yep. Good answer. Good answer. All right, here's one more. Delta IV Heavy or Vulcan?
I'll go with Delta II.
Delta II. All right. That's
Delta
a cool
II
rocket.
Workhorse.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Started
I-
GPS. Yeah.
Yeah, all those missions. Missions to Mars, even on the Delta II.
Missions to Mars. That's right.
Yeah.
And, you can't beat those GPS missions with the livery and the shark teeth. Pretty cool.
It was super cool. But I am rooting for Vulcan.
Thank you. We're
Yes.
very excited. Well, General Armagno, this has been a whole lot of fun. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for being a really good sport about some of these questions. And, we'll see you again sometime on the burn sequence.
Well, thank you very much, Tory. And it's been an honor to talk to a real rocket scientist today.
Likewise. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.